Be careful who you hit your wagon with. Hey everybody, welcome to The Whole Truth, where I try to use country sayings and roll in on a rolly chair. Okay, this is The Whole Truth, where I'm taking you through the entire Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelation, where we don't skip anything. So if that interests you, not so much my country sayings. Like sometimes if you ask me how I'm doing, I'll say hanging in there like a hair in a biscuit. That's another one. And so today we're talking about Numbers chapter 36 rather, ending the book of Numbers today. And as we're traveling through the entire Bible, I'm just really excited about today's video. I even wore my Numbers shirt. You can go get one of those on the wholetruthbiblestudy.com. It's just a way to help support the channel. And I actually think it's kind of a cool shirt. Actually, it's a really cool shirt. See that? Okay. Anyways, the book of Numbers has been really awesome. And I told you in the beginning that the book of Numbers, it just seems that way. Like it seems like a whole bunch of numbers of like a census, but it's so much more than that. There's so much depth and truth and these great stories that came out of the book of Numbers. And one of those stories that came out of it was as they were going into the promised land, and that's what's happening right now. Israel was getting ready to go into the promised land. There's a promise of land as an inheritance, but that was all given to the sons. And there's this one guy that's like, I don't have any sons. I only have daughters. What do I do? And God was like, oh, like that's good. Like we're going to take care of that. Your daughters get your inheritance. Instead of your sons getting the inheritance of your land, the daughters will get the inheritance of the land. And the reason the daughters didn't get the inheritance is because daughters were going to marry other men, and then they would have the inheritance with those families. They'd be joined. The two will become one flesh. And so those daughters of one dad marry into another tribe, and then now they're just going to get that land as the inheritance of that, son and his sons and so on. So the land was going to stay in the family, but the wives would be joined to the husbands. And so that would be the land that they would have. But what do you do with the person who doesn't have sons? Well, God said, well, you give it to the daughters. Okay, well, then now there's a new problem. And that's what we're going to read in Numbers 36 today. What happens when they marry? Does now the daughter and the wife, who's a daughter, does she get the inheritance from her dad and also get the inheritance from her husband? And then that inheritance is supposed to go to their child. So their child now has two inheritances, one from dad and one from mom. Does he get a double inheritance? How does that work? Well, no, it's not supposed to be that way. Let's read this. This is really interesting, the way that God handled this. It's very wise, but I think it's telling for us. There's a good practical lesson for us about who we marry and who we hitch our wagons with, if you will. All right, so this is Numbers chapter 36 as we close out the book of Numbers today. Now the chief fathers of the families of the children of Gilead, the son of Micah, the son of Manasseh, the families of the sons of Joseph, came near and spoke before Moses and before the leaders and the chief fathers of the children of Israel. And they said, the Lord commanded my Lord Moses to give the land as an inheritance by lot to the children of Israel. And my Lord commanded by the Lord to give the inheritance of our brother Zelophehad to his daughters. Now, if they are married to the sons of the other tribes of the children of Israel, then their inheritance will be taken from the inheritance of our fathers, and it will be added to the inheritance of the tribes into which they marry. So it will be taken from the lot of our inheritance, and when the Jubilee of the children of Israel comes, then their inheritance will be added to the inheritance of the tribe into which they marry. So their inheritance will be taken away from the inheritance of the tribe of our fathers. Then Moses commanded the children of Israel according to the word of the Lord, saying, what the tribe of the sons of Joseph speak is right. This is what the Lord commands concerning the daughters of Zelophehad, saying, let them marry whom they think best, but they may marry only within the family of their father's tribe. So the inheritance of the children of Israel shall not change hands from tribe to tribe. For every one of the children of Israel shall keep the inheritance of the tribe of his fathers, and every daughter who possesses an inheritance in any tribe tribe of the children of Israel shall be the wife of one of the family of her father's tribe, so that the children of Israel may possess the inheritance of his fathers. Thus no inheritance shall change hands from one tribe to another, but every tribe of the children of Israel shall keep its own inheritance. Just as the Lord commanded Moses, so did the daughters of Zelophehad. For Mala and Tirzah and Hoglah, Milcah and Noah, the daughters of Zelophehad, were married to the sons of their father's brothers. They were married into the families of the children of Manasseh and of the son of Joseph. Manasseh the son of Joseph, and their inheritance remained in the tribe of their families, of their father's family. These are the commandments and the judgments which the Lord commanded the children of Israel by the hand of Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. Numbers ended. All right, that is the entire book of Numbers, and I don't know how many videos this has been. Well over 100, I would presume, at this point. So that's the book of Numbers, and we end picking up with the story of the daughters of Zelophehad. What happens to them in their inheritance if they merge with a husband, and now their inheritance becomes the husband's inheritance? So now it's in a different family. So if you're in the tribe of Dan, and this one's in the tribe of Judah, but these daughters in the tribe of Dan, they had the inheritance of their dad, but they marry these sons of Judah. Now their son, now they have a son, and that son, he gets an inheritance, but he's in the tribe of Judah. So does that son now get the inheritance? Well, eventually you're going to end up with one tribe dominating and having probably all of the land. And God said, nope, the way we're going to handle that is like this. The daughters who receive an inheritance. So there are no brothers, okay? Now we're going to know this. You're going to have plenty of years to find out that you have no brothers, okay? So the daughters who have no brothers, and they are going to receive the inheritance from their dad, then they need to make sure that they marry inside of their own tribe. Don't marry outside of the tribe. Make sure you marry inside of your father's tribe. So if you're in the tribe of Dan and you're a daughter and you're receiving the inheritance, then don't marry outside of the tribe of Dan. Stay in your own tribe. That way the land, the inheritance, won't change hands. So that responsibility to make sure that the land doesn't change hands from one tribe to another tribe was now laid on the daughters to say, you can marry who you want, just so long as it's within the tribe. Don't go outside of the tribe. Now, what does that mean for you and I? I mean, practically for them, for the ancient world, this was a means of saying to keep the inheritance in the family so that the inheritance wasn't lost or absorbed into another tribe, and all of a sudden Judah becomes the biggest tribe, or Reuben becomes the biggest tribe. To make sure that that didn't happen, they were to stay within their own tribe. Now, what about for you and I today, practically today? Oh, here's what I would say to you today. You know, biblically speaking, you're free to marry who you want to marry, but also biblically speaking, it is your responsibility to stay within, I'm going to say it this way, to stay within the tribe. There's my quotes for the day, my air quotes for the day. That being to say, the Bible warns against being married to a non-believer. The Bible calls it being unequally yoked. Yoked was a term that was used for ox that were plowing a field, or even donkeys that were plowing a field. If you had ox that were going to pull, they were strong and they could pull, but you needed to have ox that were similar size. And so you didn't want to have one ox that was bigger than another ox, or one ox that was way smaller than another ox, or even at that, put an ox and a donkey together, because they can't pull at the same speed and at the same rate and with the same power. The yoke was literally like a big beam that was put across the shoulders of one ox and the shoulders of the other ox, and the plow was attached to it so that as the ox would pull, they would pull together and they could pull through the tough dirt and they could break up the dirt and till the ground. Today we would use machinery, but back then they would use ox. Well, God, when talking about marriage in the Bible, he said, don't be unequally yoked with a non-believer. When you're married, you ought to be careful not to get, when you're a Christian, I should say, you ought to be careful not to get married to a non-believer. Now, Paul addresses this fact of like, what do you do if you become a believer and you're married to a non-believer. Well, Paul addressed that, and he said, look, if you're married to a non-believer, as much as possible, try to stay with them. Don't just leave them because they're a non-believer. Don't just leave them because you've been unequally yoked. But I'm talking to the person who's not unequally yoked. Be careful who it is that you hitch your wagon with. Be careful who it is that you become yoked with. You don't want to become yoked with somebody that's unequal, that you're a believer and they're not a believer, because eventually that's going to come down to, well, what about your inheritance? There's my air quotes again. What about your inheritance? What are you going to do with your children who have dad who says, I believe one thing, and mom who says, I believe another? What if dad's the believer and dad wants to go to church, and dad is a Christian and he wants to read the Bible and he wants to tell the Christmas story, but mom is rolling her eyes and mom doesn't believe it, and that's known. Well, who do the kids go with? What side do they go with? And again, like, this is one of those tough subject things, because you might be in that situation today saying, well, what do I do? And if you're there, you try to work it out. But if you're not there, like me today, my wife has passed away. I am now a non-married man. I'm in a relationship. I have a girlfriend, but I'm not married. And so this is advice for myself. I have to be careful not to be unequally yoked with a non-believer. We want to make sure that we're yoked together, that we're linked together with other believers, that we keep it inside the tribe. Because the day's going to come that, hey, we're going to have kids, and we want those kids to be raised with equally yoked parents, not unequally yoked parents. And so we don't want to be unequally yoked with unbelievers. And I think that we could just simply say we ought to be careful and be cautious who it is that we marry. Throughout the scriptures, what we see is that God allows people to marry who they want to marry. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not good. We see marriages in the Bible that are great. We see marriages that are like these love stories. I mean, you look at the book of Ruth, and she's a widow and she finds Boaz, and Boaz takes her in and rescues her and becomes her redeemer. I mean, what a beautiful story that is. But you also have the story of like Leah and Jacob. And Leah married Jacob her dad tricked Jacob into it, and Jacob didn't really even like her. He loved Rachel, and he had children with Leah, but he didn't really love her like he loved Rachel. What a terrible situation to be in. And the Bible shows these different scenarios. Like, God doesn't intervene and make us marry somebody. That's up to us. And therefore, we ought to be careful who we hitch our wagons with. All right, I hope you enjoyed today's video and found some practicality there. And I hope you'll come back tomorrow. Well, actually, and if you're following along with this live, it'll be in 2 days. It'll be on Monday. We'll start the book of Deuteronomy. I'll see you then.